Last one, we already have the list of who's going on.
Yeah.
What are the practice arguments in 45 less? That's a precise title document. So who went last time? Did Michaela go last?
I did.
So
No,
Leah?
Leah went last.
You're not just pretending so you don't have to go this time?
I think I'm last.
You were spectacular. All right, so Shari's up now. Is that right?
I already went.
Yeah. Jay. You don't get to take spring break early and skip. So okay, I'm going to tell you a 2-minute story that I find anyways, and then we'll do Ask Me Anything, and then we'll do the practice. How's spring break?
Great.
You got what? Escape room?
It was fun.
Did you escape?
15 minutes.
My cousin loves that thing. I've done it 3 or 4 times. I was like, I'm like, yeah.
So we could get kidnapped?
That would be cool. Where was that?
Atlanta.
Oh, I was gonna say, if they were here, anybody else would do
It
it.
kind of is. It's like the wallpaper.
I have fun with them. I mean, who's done one of the escape room things? About half, a little less than half. I have fun because I enjoyed like the experience with friends, but probably not more than if like we were sitting around a table chatting. So, I know.
That's what we do with strangers, making marching training.
Oh, no, I'm straight. I'm gonna give you a little here's the practice of the day. Practice of the day, especially friendly. Don't talk to strangers. And don't take their candy. Definitely don't take their candy. Okay, so
Make money's lawyer, but you can't touch strangers.
I know. Well, let's see. What was I gonna tell you? So on Monday, here was my original travel plan. Wake up at 3 a.m. I work until about 1 a.m. So sleep 2 hours, wake up at 3 a.m., take a flight to Charlotte, and then a flight to Lynchburg, Virginia. Then give a talk, then drive an hour, then give a talk, then drive back an hour, and then take a 7 p.m. flight to Charlotte, fly from there to Louisville, and get in at midnight. So I planned a 21-hour day. And I'm telling you this because it got much worse. Much worse. The flight out of Lynchburg coming home was so delayed that I was going to miss my Charlotte connection. And I never thought I would say this sentence in my life. I really wanted to be back for the faculty meeting yesterday, which was at noon. Because I thought we were going to discuss a topic of interest to me, which we ended up not getting to. Which was fun. So I was like, I gotta get back right now, get back. How am I gonna do this? So let's just I'll take your ideas. What would you have done in this situation? Lynchburg, just so you know, its airport is the size of this classroom. So there were no other flights out of Lynchburg. Like our plane was the plane, because there was maintenance trouble, that was the issue. They had to call a maintenance crew from Roanoke, Virginia, which was about an hour away. So you're in Lynchburg, it's 7.5 hours from Louisville. At this point, it's 9 p.m. What's your plan? Drive? Now here's the thing about driving. I've been up since 3 a.m.
Yeah, you got 2 hours of sleep.
Get a Greyhound. Okay, Shelby votes for Greyhound. Shelby voted for Drive while you're exhausted. Sounds super safe. Any other ideas?
I was near the airport, like DC or something.
Good question. Probably ballpark of 2 to 3 hours. Charlotte's 3 hours. And there's a chance I can wait for the flight that night to Charlotte at 11 p.m. Assuming that like they actually fixed the engine, and it was the engine that was broken. Wasn't
Oh.
yeah, nothing about that. And so you fly to Charlotte, get in midnight, then take a 7 a.m. Charlotte flight to Louisville. That's what I did.
Wow.
Kelsey, you nailed it.
Oh,
Well, I should also add this factor. I'm not paying for any of this.
Oh, that's
Taking neither of this. Don't worry, it's not like your hard-earned tuition dollars.
what was it?
They told me it was going to be $550.
Yeah,
It's like for basically being chauffeured 500 miles.
that's like a flight.
Yeah, it's like about a one-way flight. On short notice, it's a one-way flight.
Right.
I gave him a choice. I gave him about 5 times to opt out before we did this. Are you sure you want to do this? Are you sure you want to do this? And he probably should not have done it. And I said, by the time we got to Lexington, he was doing like,
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
he wasn't like saying that, but he was doing those facial, he was doing the exact same facial motions that I used to do in college when I should not have been driving because I was too tired. So I slept, obviously, almost the entire time.
That's gonna be a story for the rest of his life, so probably. It's like, what's the farthest trip? Well,
All right, and the last wrinkle is that about 3 hours into the drive, we're in West Virginia, I'm sleeping. He starts telling me something while he pulls over on the side of the highway. And what he says is, why did you cancel the trip? I said, I didn't cancel the trip. First of all, why would I cancel the trip? Secondly, I was asleep, so I didn't do anything. But the app had canceled the trip. And so he was worried that he was not going to get paid for what was a 15-hour round trip for him.
He was about to throw you
So
out.
he said, I'm going to turn around and take you back until you figure out a solution to this. So I said, like, at least don't go backwards. Let's just, like, stop. So he would not go forward. He would not like, keep driving while I called Uber. So for 30 minutes while I worked it out with Uber, we were on the side of the highway at 3 a.m.
Oh my
just sitting there
goodness.
wasting time.
That sucks. That's weird.
He's not good.
Did Tosca with him?
It's also great. So, anyways, that's my day. Okay, so ask me anything. Any questions? Especially about argument stuff? Yeah.
Do we have to go 15 full minutes, or can we have to go early?
You should probably not end more than a minute early. In fact, I think it's advisable to go 15 minutes, especially in practice. In real life, no. In real life, like if you say everything that you feel like you need to say, I think it's kind of like a sign of confidence, a projection of confidence to say to the court, if there are no further questions, we rest on our briefs. Because it suggests that like you think you got one. But it's not overconfidence either. It also suggests you don't want to waste the court's time. I just like filibuster. But you will get penalized in the first year we're working competition. Not Saturday. Saturday's not a competition, but if you end early. And so Saturday is good practice for not doing that. So go to early. Your question? What are questions for argument stuff? To be here, everybody knows to be here. Your panel's up 2 or 3 judges, I think. I think it's 15 minutes.
Okay.
Only because that's what Showery told me. But now you're telling me it's 12. So
pretty
you told me nothing but true things today. Showery has told me. As far as I know, nothing but false things today. So but easily 12 minutes, people. You gotta help.
So I know we get up here and we're doing 5 minutes. So are we just restating our argument as we go, and is it 15 minutes per side? Or?
You mean on Saturday?
Yeah.
So on Saturday, I wish we had a Google court. Zach is on Google. Why don't I text Zach right now and ask him? And then either way, I can answer your question. How long is each oral argument Saturday? Okay, so let's say it's 12 minutes. So you're the government, I remember. But the government goes second. So let's say you're going up against Elizabeth. And Elizabeth's the defendant. So Elizabeth will get up. Elizabeth will ask to reserve 2 minutes of her time. And so she will speak for 10 minutes. And in those 10 minutes, ideally, she'll start with about 30 seconds worth of stuff and then get interrupted with questions and then be asked questions for 10 straight minutes.
Okay.
That's what should happen. If her bench is a quiet bench that doesn't ask enough questions, then once they start asking questions, Elizabeth should talk and use that time to further explain why she's right. And that's when you can kind of revert back to your outline and expand on primary purpose, apply it, expand on normality, apply it, expand on surrogate witness, apply it, and fill up it. And some of you honestly, like, that will probably happen to some of you because we can't control exactly how active each bench is. But hopefully most of you will get questions for those 10 minutes. So that's we list this 10 minutes, then you would come up, same thing for you, you have 12 minutes. You might start with about 30 seconds, a minute, get interrupted, answer questions, hopefully you'll keep asking questions. You go the full 12 minutes, and then when you're done, Elizabeth is 2 minutes. So,
And they'll know about our case before.
yeah, so they were going to receive a bench memo, and they probably already received it by email. Most of them will probably skim it for the first time that morning.
Okay.
But it's a pretty good bench memo. It's pretty concise, and it doesn't require, you know, I think it will, whatever. They'll know almost nothing. But that's actually not totally unusual for an appellate court. I mean, a real appellate court would have gotten your briefs weeks in advance and should have read them, and their clerks write a bench memo, and they should have read the bench memo from the clerks. But, you know, some judges come to oral arguments very prepared, and some judges are busy. And even at the trial level, it's even more so, that you might file a 10-page motion to exclude evidence, and then get there for the hearing on that motion, and the judge will either say or make it very clear through his or her actions. I'm not read the motion. I have no idea what the hearing is about. Tell me what you said. So, two practices for overcoming a very big knowledge gap for you all along. By the end of the day, you know, this is a little different dynamic than in real life. By the end of the day, though, the judges will know a lot more about this case because they will have heard 4 or 5 more arguments already. So that can be an advantage or disadvantage if you're going later. Advantage because they'll be able to ask better questions. Disadvantage because they will know what they're talking about enough to kind of call you on stuff if you're not always. Not every way, but that's the they're in their position to ask a high quality follow-up question. What else? Right. So shall we go? Let's do it.
So just go by yourself.
Who else wants to be practice judges? Any volunteers? So much fun. Come on. This is your last chance to be a real judge for at least 4 years. Yeah, please, let's see. Get out of here.
So you go by yourself? Are you not going into there?
It's not in my way.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's no volunteers. You're not here. No. Alright, so I'm taking some seat back here. What else? We have one more. Can we go? No. Alright, Alex.
Is there gonna be a thing on it?
There's not like a clock, but there will be a student volunteer, which is the, what do they call that person? Timekeeper, but I think and they'll tell you, I think, you need to get left, and figure out. Okay, so I'm going to ask tougher questions today than last week because the reward for going last week was softball questions. I'm not going to ask any other questions. And you know, if you're not prepared for an answer, then do your best. But you know, this is not low stakes. This is no stakes. So it's a chance to kind of either be right. But I do think that you know, I will try to give you an idea of the kinds of questions that the judges will be asking, or maybe more precisely, the kinds of questions that the judges should be asking. Okay, we might stop watching. Okay, so Zach says that it's 15 minutes per side.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, I'm not tickered, so. Okay, go ahead.
Good morning, Your Honors. May it please the Court. My name is Shari Belanki, and I represent the appellant Ronald Miller. At this time, I would like to request 2 minutes for rebuttal.
No problem.
Thank you. This Court should reverse the decision of the District Court because Mr. Miller's rights under the Confrontation Clause of the Sixth Amendment was violated. Mr. Miller's constitutional rights were violated for 2 reasons. First, the autopsy report is testimonial because it satisfies both the primary purpose and the formality test.
Can I stop you there about the 2 tests? What test should we apply? I know you're going to talk about both of them, but assuming you can pick, should we apply the primary purpose test? Should we apply the formality test? And then the other way of thinking about it is, what if one side is going to win one test, and the other side is going to win the other test? Which is the better test?
I think both the tests are pretty equal. If I were to choose, I would say the primary purpose test is more important.
Can you tell me a little bit about why?
It's been regarded more in the past. It is the more popular test, and the formality test exists more because if the primary purpose test is insufficient or has some weaknesses, the formality test exists to compensate for that.
Great.
The second reason that Mr. Miller's constitutional rights was violated was because Dr. Adler's surrogate testimony was an insufficient substitute for Dr. Hines. The autopsy report is testimonial under the primary purpose test because the primary purpose of an autopsy report is to establish evidence relevant to a later criminal prosecution. The Davis v. Washington, ever since the landmark case Davis v. Washington, the Supreme Court developed the primary purpose test to differentiate between testimonial and non-testimonial statements. The court there defined evidence.
Let me interrupt again. That's all very helpful. I'm going to go ahead and move to the application of that primary purpose test. As you know, when Dr. Hines performed the autopsy, he believed he was dealing with suicide. There was not any suspicion that a crime had been committed. So how could the primary purpose of what he did be to produce evidence against Miller?
I would argue that there was a suspicion that a crime had been committed because the autopsy test was conducted. There would be no reason to conduct an autopsy test if there was no suspicion that a crime had been committed. In our case,
just to follow up to that, you have persuaded me that there probably was suspicion. So I agree with you. You correctly did not run with false premise on the question. But I do think that there are purposes of an autopsy in addition to criminal investigation. Would you agree with that?
Possibly.
I mean, let's say that a loved one of mine passes away unexpectedly, and there's no reason to suspect foul play, right? I just want to know what my loved one died of. Seems to me that happens all the time. Isn't that an example of an autopsy with no criminal investigation purpose?
That is an example, but that is not what we have here. In this case, the autopsy report was conducted specifically to determine if it was a homicide and not suicide.
Great.
There are 2 crucial factors that suggest the primary purpose of the autopsy report was to establish evidence relevant to a later criminal prosecution. First, medical examiners are required to notify law enforcement when a death has been labeled homicide. And second, Dr. Hines wrote the word homicide on the report. Hence, Dr. Hines knew writing homicide meant being obligated to notify law enforcement.
Excuse me, just a quick clarification, sorry, interrupt right there. So you said that Dr. Adler's not a sufficient surrogate witness. Where are you getting those cases?
Consistent with precedent, he's not a sufficient surrogate witness. For example, in the case Bullcoming v. New Mexico, the Supreme Court determined a similar fact pattern that the testimony by surrogate analysts was inadmissible and violated the Confrontation Clause.
So let's stop there. Great job. Let me throw that question a little lower so you can save yours for the next person who's the next side. So I mean, that was, I think, like about as well as it was done. Honestly, we had 3 hard questions. I asked 2, Alex asked 1, and you kept it cool. Your tone was great the whole time, and your substance was great. On the first question, which test should be applied, I think that your answer was not only right, it was well supported, well reasoned. I mean, primary purpose test is a better test because it's the one court's used the most. So if I'm a lower court and I'm trying to figure out like which test should I use, okay, yes, Justice Thomas likes the other one, but pretty much everyone else prefers the primary purpose test. So it's a good answer. The second question, I think you were correct not to accept the premise of my question that that Dr. Hines, had no suspicion of any crime, and with that, she was shot. So there's can always be some suspicion. I've mentioned that there was no suicide note, other things that might have led to suspicion of murder. And then your answer to Alex's question was good. It's a good bridge. For example, and then name a case. It's a good thing to keep in mind in terms of how to answer a question. So Alex said, give me a case. You were able to give him a case. And you actually gave him the case. The best case for the defense on the question of surrogate witness is a Supreme Court controlling case, and it deals with surrogate witness and defense witness. So other thoughts on Shari? We're going to go in order. So I think we went this way last time. We're going to stop.
I went this way.
Last. Okay.
No,
So,
not me. Don't talk to me.
Jacob, what Shari do?
I'm not gonna send over, so I think the questions for the solid. You did kind of post like a full you got there.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think we have questions. And not only did you answer all, but you didn't dodge them.
Yeah.
So, good. Okay.
Oh, great job.
So this might be stupid for a technicality, but so I'm confused on your side if you were to say that it satisfies the test or it doesn't.
That's a good point. I guess usually you should make clear in the context, like the government cannot satisfy its burden on the primary purpose test, or the defendant cannot satisfy its burden on the primary purpose test. And with that, let's say the defendant cannot satisfy his burden on the primary purpose test. It means the defendant cannot show that the primary purpose is going to lead to a good result for the defendant. But I would try to phrase it like that as opposed to just saying the test is not satisfying. Primary purpose is not satisfying. Well, who's failing to satisfy? Make sense? Okay, we're ready to go.
Good morning, Your Honors. May it please report, my name is Elizabeth Clements.
I think it's she were a little quiet. I'll try to do some suggestions. So, yeah, okay, let's start with it. Ready you are.
Good morning, Your Honors. May it please report, my name is Elizabeth Clements, and I represent the appellant, Monica Miller. At this time, I would like to reserve 2 minutes for rebuttal.
No problem.
So a brief summary of the facts. Mr.
You
Miller.
can skip the summary because we're good. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, excuse me. So the main issue on appeal here is whether Dr. Hines' autopsy report was considered a testimonial statement, making him an adverse witness against Mr. Miller. At trial, a surrogate witness, Dr. Monica Adler, was used to replace Dr. Hines as a witness, and this was not appropriate and violated Mr. Miller's Sixth Amendment confrontation rights because the autopsy report was in fact a testimonial statement, meaning the primary purpose test, because the statement author was very entangled with law enforcement throughout the creation of the report. The statement author, Dr. Hines, knew that the report would be used as evidence in a future trial, and when the statement is a forensic court, as the case is here, the report's validity depended on Dr. Hines' skill and judgment as a medical
Do you think
examiner.
the autopsy report targeted a specific individual?
I believe in this case that it did, because Mr. Miller was the only suspect after the autopsy report was created. Law enforcement was involved from the moment that he made his 911 call all the way through the actual submission of the report to police. The law enforcement officer who appeared at the scene first was also there throughout the process of the autopsy. So there was a law enforcement official who knew that he was the only person home at the time.
I think that Dr. Hines had even heard of Mr. Miller's name.
I don't believe we can know that unless we call him as an adverse witness, but that is very, very likely considering that the actual officer who appeared first at the scene and questioned Mr. Miller was present at the autopsy itself.
Assume, as persuasive as those 2 answers were, that I'm not persuaded, that I think this autopsy report did not target a specific individual. Does that mean you lose, or can you still go on?
I do not believe that means that we lose. In this case, whether it targeted a specific individual, Mr. Miller, or not, the medical examiner, Dr. Hines, knew that the report would trigger a criminal investigation and lead to a trial because he determined manner of death was homicide. And the only 2 outcomes from the autopsy report would have either been suicide or homicide. So it would either confirm there was no criminal trial possible or there would be one.
Doesn't let me ask one more question, because it's college that. Doesn't Williams v. Illinois say that a report is not testimonial when it does not target a specific individual? And if that's the case, doesn't that mean, I think this is not target a specific individual, that you lose?
Williams v. Illinois may say that, however, it is not binding precedent, it's a plurality opinion, and it is also distinguishable from our case because in Williams v. Illinois, the DNA analyst who did the report had no way of knowing whether or not what they were reporting would turn out to be incriminating or exonerating, whereas in our case, Dr. Hines knew that what he produced would be incriminating to some individual.
You mentioned that Dr. Hines knew that the report would be used in a criminal prosecution. Where are you seeing that? What evidence do you have to suggest that he did?
The fact that the state autopsy protocol for the state of Indiana specifically says that pathologists are required, or highly suggested, in cases where there is even a possibility of a criminal trial. And in this case, where death was by suicide and not just by some other unknown events, the medical examiner would have either confirmed suicide, leading to most definitely no criminal investigation, or he would have confirmed homicide, which he did, which led to a criminal investigation. There's no other outcome when you conclude homicide other than someone murdered someone else, and that's the statement that you're making, which would lead to a criminal trial.
Let's stop there. Good job, Elizabeth. So we'll do the compliment from Leah before I talk. There's less chance that I'll steal what you're going to say.
I like how you answered the questions without, like they were hard questions trying to say like you're wrong, and you were like, oh no, actually I like how you answered that straight on.
Great, I agree. Good lack of reliance on notes too. I didn't feel like you were always having conversation with us, and not like talking at us or reading, reciting. Anything like I was listening to an audio. So good style, good substance. First of all, before we start asking questions, I thought Elizabeth did a nice job of doing the applications of the primary purpose test very quickly. I wasn't even realize exactly what was going on, but she was explaining the rule and applying the rule at the same time. And you want to separate that a little bit more in your writing because you have the space for it. But in the oral argument, if you can, there's so little time to get across what you want to get across that that was effectively done. Good answer on the first question. Once again, don't just assume that the premise of the question is correct. So thought you did a good job of saying why Williams did not target a specific. Sorry, why Dr. Hines was targeting a specific individual, or at least why you think so. And then I thought the answer to the question. That was great. That's great. It's like a very basic thing. Where I was going to ask a question and you just like turn it back. Like, yeah, well, like you come in and call Hines and say it, then we know. That's great. Good answer on Williams. Knowing there was a plurality, I was kind of fishing for that. And I kind of thought that would be the answer to the question before, but you answered that was better. And then you got to the part about how Williams is not controlling this plurality. Don't fall down the trap. Don't fall in the trap of the judges pretending that Williams is a binding majority. I'm not even sure how clear the judgment is whether Williams was a majority of the plurality. Hopefully, at least mentions it was plurality. That's the kind of thing the judges can easily skim over in this game.
I have two questions. So about Williams, if you're on the prosecution side, even though that case is helpful, do you avoid it because it's plurality, or you just still use it?
I would use it.
Okay.
I use it for lots of reasons. First of all, U.S. plurality. It's a Supreme Court plurality, right? This is the court. This is the highest court telling the lower courts. In a situation like Williams, Illinois wins. And whether it's a plurality or a majority, at the end of the day, Illinois did win that case. And so lower courts, in a similar situation, are not supposed to be allowed to let Williams win in a similar situation. Now, the reasoning that the court used to get there, I think the defendant can fairly say, that reasoning is not binding. So a big part of that reasoning is targeting a specific individual, and so if I were the defendant, I would not accept that that is the test. But I do think that the defendant has to propose a test, if pushed. The defendant has to propose a test under which Williams would lose, but Miller would win. And if the defendant is proposing a test under which Williams would lose, that's not consistent with the decision of the court majority. And then I also thought, just one last thought on both Shari and Elizabeth. When you get hard questions, I think you should view that as an opportunity. Because it's kind of hard to shine when you're asked dumb questions. The same way it's kind of like hard to hit a 400-foot home run when you're throwing a little ball. But like the harder the pitch, the harder your hit is going to be, if you make contact. View tough questions, not gotcha questions, those are stupid, and like you shouldn't have to put up with that, or unfair questions. But tough, substantive questions that go to the heart of the case, view those as an opportunity for you to really stretch your stuff. Who's next? I have a list, so. Bryce.
I went very first.
I don't remember that. You have to go again. That's what the list says. It feels like you're lying. There's not here.
Oh.
You want to? Oh, that's fine. You do go on Friday, we're going pretty quick. So here's the list. It goes Bailey, Sidney, Sam, Kelsey, Shelby Hall, Melby, Priya, Zach, Dimitri, and Taylor when she comes back. So we'll go first. And actually, let's see how many shot 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. We'll do 6 today. So Sharia, Elizabeth, Bailey, Sidney, Sam, and are you gonna go? Okay.
Good morning, Your Honors. My name is Bailey McCarr. Today, I represent the state in their case against the defendant, Ronald Miller, for the murder of his wife. I would like this court to affirm the lower court's decision because the defendant's right to confront the witnesses against him was not violated by the state introducing Mrs. Miller's autopsy and death certificate through surrogate testimony. That decision should be upheld because under the primary purpose and formality test, the evidence is more like non-testimonial evidence and the surrogate testimony is sufficient. First, under the primary purpose test provided in Davis v. Washington, the primary purpose of evidence in this case was to complete a routine procedure that is required with any violent death in the state of Brandeis. Precedent provides 3 factors that are relevant regarding the primary purpose test to decide whether or not evidence is testimonial. Here, the evidence is like previous evidence held non-testimonial in Williams v. Illinois because it was produced before any suspect was identified. It is also evidence held testimonial in Melendez v. Massachusetts and Will Cumming v. New Mexico because the defendants there were suspects at the time the evidence was produced.
Great. So can we pause there for a moment? Let's go through each of those cases, and then I'll guide you. I'll do case by case. So let's start with Williams. Expand for us on why our case is similar to Williams.
So it's similar to Williams because it was produced before any suspect was identified. So in that case, it was not inherently inculpatory because the DNA profile on the rape kit actually did produce, it could produce multiple suspects, and they had other evidence that led them to convict the defendant in that case.
Okay. And in Melendez-Diaz, I heard you say that our case is distinguishable from that. So tell me why our case is different than that. And you can assume that I don't know very much about Melendez-Diaz.
So the analysts were aware of the affidavit's evidentiary purpose in that case, and it was a test confirming the substance seized from the defendant, so they did get that from the defendant.
Okay, and then tell me how our case is different than Volkman. And again, just assume that I'm not familiar with Volkman.
So their law enforcement provided the seized evidence to a state laboratory, and the defendant was a suspect at that time, which is not in our case.
Great. Now the part about the defendant not being a suspect comes, I think, mainly from Williams v. Illinois. And as you know, that case was a plurality decision with no majority opinion. Talk to us about why we should still care what Williams has to say.
You should still care what Williams has to say because it also has been used to help identify testimonial and non-testimonial statements in other state court cases, lower state court cases. So they use that test. I'm sorry. That's a hard question.
I'm going to ask a question I asked your opposing counsel, and that is, what test do you think we should apply? I know your brief gives us both tests, primary purpose test and testimonial, and I know you think you went under either of them. But which do you think is the test we should apply, and then why?
I think the primary purpose test provides more factors and provides more relevant facts for determining whether or not the evidence is testimonial, just because it involves looking at whether the evidence was produced before any suspect, whether or not it was made by or to law enforcement, and whether it was made in the normal course of operation, whereas the formality test is still not very established and doesn't have those main three factors. I think that's the test works well.
Those are all my questions, but do you all have any?
Can I ask you, what makes Dr. Adler a sufficient surrogate witness?
So she's a sufficient surrogate witness because she was proven, or the original analyst in this situation was proven to be unavailable, and then Dr. Adler was able to talk about the test that he used, so any inconsistencies with that, and then also came up with her own conclusions based on the facts that were given in the autopsy.
Okay, great job. So I thought that, well, here, before I do all the great things Bailey did,
I thought she was literally clear in her answers, like pretty to the point, and answered them.
agree with that. I thought on substance and style both very good.
And I'm obviously really nervous.
Well, that's one of the things that I was going to compliment you on is that I could tell you were nervous when I called your name to go up, and I could tell you were nervous after it was over. But this is all that matters. I didn't tell you were nervous when you got there. I thought you did a great job of not letting the nerves show. And you know, there's some line on the exact quote, but like that, you know, courage is not saying not being afraid. The courage is when you are afraid, doing it anyway. You know, there's something analogous there to being nervous, but not letting those nerves get better. And, that was awesome. That's also the name of the game for other things too, beyond oral arguments, you know, final exams or bar exam, whatever. It's fine to be nervous, which is only nervous with that. I thought you had good volume also, and I thought that on Williams, you did a good job knowing the facts of that case. And then my first question about it, and then on the later question about Williams, I thought that you had a good answer that, you know, why should we care about Williams? You know, it's probably one reason is lower courts rely, you know, other lower courts rely, and this court should take guidance from those other lower courts. Two suggestions. One is that you started before I was looking up, or before I said to go. You don't have to literally wait until the judge says like magic words, I am ready. If the judge is like looking at you waiting for you to start talking, then you start talking. But if the judge is, you know, filling the papers and looking down, hasn't told you to start, and you know, you might ask the judge like, are you ready to meet the judge? And then watch the person knowledge. Like, you know Melendez, Diaz, Williams, and Wolfman much better than the judges do. It's gonna be true not just for neighbors, it's true for everybody. And so it will be too easy for you to just like talk about those cases as if your audience is familiar with it. But I'm telling you, like most of these judges have never done a confrontation clause case like ever, and they are not going to know these cases inside and out. Most of them will have basically never heard these cases until that point. And so they, yes, like you spent a paragraph on Melendez, Diaz, and attention. Maybe they read it, maybe they didn't. Even if they read it, maybe they've forgotten it. I don't have photograph memory. Most of them don't either. So they are really only going to know as much about Melendez, Diaz as you tell them. And same for Wolfman, same for Williams, same for Holmes. What did you tell them when you were there? So remember the coaching knowledge, second day class. Okay, great job. Okay, who's next? All right.
Good morning, Your Honors. My name is Cindy Lane, and I represent the state of Brandeis. This court should confirm the lower court's decision that Mr. Miller's right to confrontation was not violated for 3 reasons. First, the primary purpose of the autopsy report was not to be used in a criminal prosecution, so it's not testimonial. Second, the autopsy report and death certificate lack the degree of formality required to be testimonial. And third, Dr. Adler's testimony was a sufficient substitute because she was a reliable witness who testified to her own opinions. When applying the primary purpose test, courts looked at 3 factors. First, if the defendant was a suspect when the report was created. Second, if the report was made in the regular course of business. And third, if the relationship between law enforcement and the medical examiner. In Williams v. Illinois, the court held that a DNA profile of the suspected rapist was not testimonial because at the time the test was
Can I stop
performed.
for a moment before we get too far into the weeds of the precedents? Here's what I think. You can tell me why. I think that the purpose of the autopsy report was not to create evidence for trial when it began. So I'm with you on that. But I think that as soon as Hines realized that he had murder on his hands, the purpose of that autopsy report changed. And when he wrote homicide, he wrote it knowing that that report would be used at a homicide trial, because that's what happens in homicide. They get investigated and they get prosecuted. And in order to prosecute a homicide, you gotta show the victim was dead, and often the cause of death is murder. So tell me why. So I think that the primary purpose was to produce evidence at trial, not when it began, but as soon as Hines realized that it was a murder. Tell me why I'm wrong.
So even though he could have potentially realized there was a murder in the middle of it before he reached his final conclusion at the end, Mr. Miller still wasn't a suspect, which is the first aspect of the primary purpose test. He didn't become a suspect until after the autopsy report was completed, and also criminal investigation did not begin into Mr. Miller until after it was done. Also, the report was made in the regular course of business. Medical examiners in Brandeis are required to do autopsies for any violent death, not just something that may be homicide in nature. So when he started, he believed it was a suicide, and he didn't reach his final conclusions until the end, but he's satisfied, or I guess the defendant can't produce his burden for the primary purpose test because the aspects of the test were followed.
Oh, yeah, so I mentioned, so you said that you believe the autopsy report wasn't formal, or what were you using to evaluate formality?
So the report wasn't sworn to in front of a notary public, and it didn't certify the accuracy of his findings. He merely just signed the report, and that was it. So under Williams and Justice Thomas' concurrence, that would not be enough to satisfy the formality requirement.
I'll go back to primary purpose. The cop was in the room. Doesn't that show his primary purpose was criminal investigation? Let me rephrase that. If the primary purpose of the autopsy was not criminal investigation, why was there a police officer there?
So a police officer in Brandeis and medical examiners have completely separate roles, and it's laid out in a guidebook. The police officer's jobs are to investigate the crimes, and the medical examiner's job is to determine the cause of death. So in this case, even though the police officer was there, I don't think it necessarily satisfies the primary purpose test. For example, a police officer could arrange for an autopsy to be done when there is like a car accident, and just because a police officer arranges that doesn't mean that the autopsy is going to be used in a criminal investigation, because autopsies are used for multiple reasons and not just homicides.
So that's a perfect answer. Expand my last question, maybe I have time. Expand on the last thing you said, that autopsies have more purposes than just criminal investigation. What are some of those other purposes?
So autopsies can be used for medical research, they can be used for wrongful death suits, they can be used for any suspicious death. In this case, any violent death, since suicide is considered violent death. There are multiple reasons that autopsies are done besides just homicides.
Great. Thanks very much. I'm not surprised, but I thought that was just great close to perfect. What did you say? I mean, you say that, but like again, everybody's done. I think perfectly. And I think part of it is that they're superb students.
Yeah.
But part of it is that like you really can't like give good answers if you're not asking questions. Or it's not good questions, but you can't give good answers if you're not asking tough questions. I thought that okay, let's start. Tell me.
I thought her tone was good as far as I've heard other people in the way she conveyed her message, where it was kind of like Priya said, like this is what I'm saying, and these are all the facts to it. I thought her beginning was very strong as well, and then the way she guided the questions.
Awesome. I agree with all of that. My only suggestion is you talked a little fast, particularly at the beginning. No, I'm talking a little fast. Particularly at the beginning when you were kind of doing your planned remarks. And I don't know if it was because of nerves or if it was because you like felt like you had a lot to say and you wanted to get it in. For whatever reason, everyone remember only 2 stylistic tips, or the big 2 stylistic tips. Speak loudly and speak slowly. But that's a small suggestion, and the rest of it I thought it really was excellent. Question about primary purpose. Good job. I have my notes. I talked about non-assessment. You can came back to that. I thought it was the right answer there. Good answer on the formality question. Good answer when you talk about the guidebook. It's just you knew every test thoroughly. You knew all the facts of our case thoroughly. You knew the state of Brandeis guidebook, statutory regime thoroughly. And although your style was very good, you answered the questions directly and you were clear and concise. Good style will only get you so far. And if you don't have good substance, then you're in trouble. And your substance was perfect. So especially in the last question, I don't remember what it was, but the second to last, I asked one for follow-up, but I thought that just hit it out of the park. I actually just like A+ job there. And today, I'll say this, I'm sure this will continue, but I think the 4 people got today, probably like the best 4 in a row I've ever seen. Trying to do this 4 years. So, anyway, great job everybody. Okay. You choose to fill, Sam.
You're fine, right?
I think you're already off to the start because that shirt sets the bar so low.
Oh, great.
As long as you put together 3 complete sentences, that's going to be 1 more complete sentence than the Cardinals had wins last year.
Yeah,
and so I think that's.
If I'm not afraid to you go. You do basketball?
I said, as a matter of fact, we did not win a game my first 2 years of college.
Oh.
And then when we won my junior year, our first game against some crummy team, we tore down the goalpost. Okay, ready to question.
Good morning, Your Honor. My name is Samuel Hoffman, and I represent the appellant, Mr. Ronald Miller. Before we begin, I would like to reserve 2 minutes of my time for a brief rebuttal.
No problem.
May it please the Court. The Constitution's 6th Amendment Confrontation Clause provides criminal defendants the right to confront witnesses brought against them. As Justice Kennedy notes, the clause's underlying purpose is to ensure a fair trial with reliable evidence. Mr. Ronald Miller's constitutional rights were violated when an autopsy report and death certificate were improperly admitted into evidence against him without the accompanying in-court live testimony of the document's original creator, Dr. Michael Hines. This evidence rises to the level of a confrontational clause violation because its primary purpose was to establish or prove events potentially relevant to later criminal prosecution. The Supreme Court refers to this class of evidence as, quote, testimonial. So only statements or pieces of evidence that are given this classification are governed by the confrontation clause. The primary purpose of the autopsy report and death certificate was to prove a material fact, or establish one, that Mr. Miller's death was a homicide. The statement presents the same evidence that would have been introduced through direct examination of Dr. Hines at trial. The 2 documents qualify as testimonial because Dr. Hines reasonably believed that the documents would be made available for use at a later trial when he denoted homicide on his report.
Can I stop you there? That's all very helpful. I take it that the Supreme Court has never directly addressed whether autopsy reports are testimonial. Is there a lower court that has taken the approach that you want us to take?
I know there is one.
Let me rephrase a little bit. So your opponent's quote, brief talks about lower court cases that go their way, that go the government's way. And so, even if you don't remember exactly what those cases are, talk to me about, why you think those cases kind of went off the rails.
Sure. So there are some distinguishing factors of the binding cases that we must sort of follow. Most of the Supreme Court's, interactions with a confrontation clause have been through sort of extremely objective, either laboratory tests or some kind of a document that can be evaluated from a second source, really with no accompanying testimony from the document's original creator. However, I think the thing that makes the autopsy reports distinguishing from these and why the courts have gone off the rails is because what goes into filing or creating an autopsy report is highly subjective in terms of the document's creator's opinion, their ability to physically evaluate the evidence themselves and reach a conclusion. So I think the reason why lower courts have reached that determination is because of just the uniqueness of an autopsy.
Great. I didn't give more on that.
Oh no, I didn't. I guess we can evaluate this later in the argument that the prosecution offers Dr. Adler as a substitute, albeit an insufficient one, because Dr. Adler was not present at the original autopsy. She had no real interest or part in creating the accompanying report or death certificate, and she did not sign the document either. And one unique factor here is that Ms. Miller's body was cremated after the autopsy. So this makes it completely impossible for Dr. Adler to evaluate the physical evidence herself. So I think those factors all make her an insufficient substitute for Dr. Hines.
So I think that's very well put. I'm struggling with this because I agree with everything you just said about why Adler is insufficient, or at least close to insufficient. But I'm struggling with it because I just can't wrap my head around the fact that medical examiners do die sometimes. I was listening to a song in the car on my way here today, Jason Isbell, my new favorite singer. And something about how, if we were vampires who would live forever, we would have to, make the most of our time. But we're not, so let's hold hands and make the most of our time. And, I think there's a connection there, believe it or not, between that, insight that everybody dies and the defense's argument here, and the government's argument that we can't live in a world where every criminal defendant just goes scot-free when he's lucky enough to have killed someone whose medical examiner dies before trial. Can we?
Well, I don't think factual determinations, as far as Mr. Miller's guilt, I don't think we're here to really do or conclude. But as far as the procedural aspect of it, while Dr. Hines isn't deceased, he is unavailable. He's overseas serving our country. That is an aspect of when you're allowed to have a surrogate testify. But we aren't in one of those circumstances here where the defendant was completely, where the defendant had an opportunity to cross-examine the original preparer of the documents. The defense was given zero opportunity to cross-examine Dr. Hines before trial. So in a sense, he was effectively deceased for the purposes of this trial before, and because there was no meaningful interaction between the defense and Dr. Hines before this trial or during it.
So I'm going to stop there because we're well over time. One of the reasons we're over time is that you're doing a good job, and I didn't want to stop you earlier. So good job. So lots of things I think you did really well. I'll start with.
First of all, I just felt like your tone was pretty loud and clear, did several other words, and then kind of like your argument at the beginning, I just kind of explained what testimonial meant to you, what kind of outlines it as, and now you began to explain how it applies to the facts of the game in that case. Then the first question you got, you like reading the explanation, and you're able to explain yourself and move on to the argument post question answering.
Good. So I agree with all of that. In particular, I thought your volume was great right from the beginning, or especially at the beginning. And your start was great too. People were demanding. You started with the Constitution. Your substance and your style both built up your credibility immediately. And so, like, I as a judge wanted to hear. I didn't want to interrupt you, but I felt like I wanted to hear what you were going to say next because I felt you were not going to waste your time. I also thought that your opening statement was well organized, well structured. I thought that moving ahead a little bit, once we got into Q&A, you did a good job blasting away Dr. Adler and why she was insufficient as a surrogate witness. Discrimination, she can't do it over again, this difference, that difference. So that was all very good. So I really don't have very many suggestions. One thing that everybody I mentioned before, no reason to have prepared for this for practice, but for Saturday, have a list of the cases and have it on top so you don't have to go through your notes. But if by some chance you do get asked a question that is in your notes and it's going to take you a minute to flip through and find it, that you kind of look like, oh, I've done something wrong because like I might have to take a moment to find one of these lower court cases. And so I didn't want you to feel like I moved on a little bit, but don't feel like you have done something wrong. It's perfectly acceptable to say to the judges, please give me a moment. I have the answer to your question, but it's going to take me a moment to find the precise information or something like that. And 1 in 100 chance you get just a jerk judge who's like, no, or let's say you so long like that. I mean, so slim. And when we find out about those judges, we don't invite it back. So 99 chance out of 100, the judge will be perfectly fine giving you 30 seconds, whatever it is, to go through your notes and find the answer. A good judge wants the best answer, not the fastest answer. So don't feel like you've done something wrong if you find yourself in that situation. And then I think I asked him one of the toughest questions. It's not an original question to me. It's something that the courts that come out in favor of the government talk about. It just seems unfair for a criminal defendant to win because he's lucky enough to know that they died already, or is unavailable, or whatever. Especially like it's not certainly the government's fault when they're died. So I think you answered it well, trying to distinguish our case from one where it died. And I also think part of that answer can be for the defendant. If you have a problem with that result, then you have a problem with the Sixth Amendment, and take it up with the framers. I mean, seriously, like the framers created a system where sometimes guilty people will go free, and they did it to protect against a greater risk, which is that innocent people will be found guilty. And in order to protect against that, they adopted some pretty pro-defendant, prophylactic rules. And confrontation clause is one of them. Maybe it's a good rule, maybe it's a dumb rule. That's not for this court to decide. The framers decided, and if you don't like it, we need to repeal that argument. Okay, good job, Sam. All right, we have one more thing. Is that right? Yep. Ready to work.
Good morning. My name is Kelsey Cole, and I represent the state of Brandeis. Today I'm asking the court to affirm the lower court's holding and finding that the autopsy in Ronald Miller's case did not violate the 6th-Amendment confrontation clause. The autopsy in this case is not testimonial for two reasons. First, it fails to meet the standards set forth in the primary purpose test, and second, it fails to meet Justice Thomas's standards and his concurrence for formality. Even if the court finds today that the autopsy is testimonial, Dr. Adler is an expert in the field of pathology and is qualified to give expert testimony based on her opinions in court. The primary purpose test laid out in Davis v. Washington says that when evidence is gathered for establishing facts in a criminal trial, that evidence is testimonial. There are three factors that help determine what the primary purpose of a piece of evidence is. The first factor is whether the defendant was a suspect whenever the evidence was created. In our case, Ronald Miller was not a suspect when the autopsy was started. The police officer...
Wasn't he a suspect by the time it ended?
Yes, he was, but whenever Ms. Miller's body was sent to the autopsy, the officer didn't even check for gunshot residue on any person's hands at the crime scene.
But if she was a suspect by the time it ended, doesn't that mean that the report isn't that what matters?
No.
I tell you why.
Because whenever you look at precedents like Melendez, Diaz, and Bullcoming, they come out inside of the defense. When you look at those cases, the person was already in custody whenever those reports were made. In our case, that's not the case. Even though whenever it came out, they knew that it would be used in a criminal investigation. Dr. Hines didn't even, the record doesn't even show that he knew that Ronald Miller would be a suspect in the crime.
What if, let me give you a hypothetical. It's just like Melendez Diaz, that was one of those. Melendez Diaz is suspected of cocaine. They find cocaine in the car that he was selling out of. They test the cocaine, it comes back positive. All same thing. And all along, he was the only suspect for the person whose cocaine it was. It was like his car is stolen. Maybe the cop even saw him like drop the bag of cocaine and run away. And they test cocaine. But here's the reason hypothetical difference from Melendez Diaz. He's not in custody. He's actually on the lam. They still, while they're looking for him, run the cocaine test. Wouldn't the cocaine test there still be testimonial even though he was not in custody?
So our case is different from that hypothetical because the regular course of business of a medical examiner is different than the situation that you just described. There are lots of reasons for an autopsy, and some of those reasons are laid out in People vs. Dungo. You can see that families often request autopsies, insurance companies request autopsies, they're done for medical research, etc. So the fact that autopsies are done for a multitude of purposes kind of discounts that hypothetical.
That's good. Let's talk about Williams. I asked earlier, I was asking a question. The reasoning of the plurality was rejected by a majority of the court in Williams because it was rejected by the 4 dissenters and was rejected by Justice Thomas. Why should we still care about what the plurality said in Williams?
Williams is still a Supreme Court case. It shows that the state of Illinois won in that situation. So situations similar to that where there isn't a suspect whenever the report is created, the state should win in those types of cases. The reasoning, you get there different ways, but I still believe that case shows the trend that the court is moving toward in how they are willing to decide those cases.
What about there's a surrogate witness in Volkman. Volkman was the blood alcohol test case, and the court said surrogate witness is not okay. How is Dr. Adler different than the surrogate witness?
Dr. Adler, she had a lot of testimony or questions in trial where they asked specific facts, not just about the process of what happened in the autopsy, but facts that would be true whether or not she did the autopsy or not. So facts, they asked her questions about sibling patterns, whether or not they washed away in water, and she can answer that question without doing that autopsy. Those are true facts whether or not she even saw Mrs. Miller's body. So if you look at the record, there are multiple examples of the defense asking those types of questions, and that's where our case is different from Volkman there.
Awesome. Do you have any questions?
Good.
Yeah, good. You're also speechless. Let's see, who's up? Yeah.
Yeah, I thought you did do a really good job absorbing some of his tough questions, kind of stating your distinctions between your cases, and then you added that people were telling you that was great timing.
So good. I thought one of the best things you did was before class even started. I had not guaranteed you were the day, but you were prepared to go day, and I could tell as soon as you got up there, you know exactly what you were talking about, and you got some notes, and you were ready to roll. And so great job being prepared, you really want to show you were going to go day. Good answer on I think it was my first question. So the test should be are you in custody yet? And so even if Miller was a suspect by the end of the autopsy, that's not really the test. The test that's coming out of Williams is are you in custody yet? So I think that was good. Then I asked the hypothetical about in custody, and I thought that you did a good job of your one suggestion. You switched pretty quickly from the in custody factor to the course of business factor, and I think that it would be better to quickly answer the question directly without the in custody hypothetical, and then after you quickly answered it, pivot to what you did and the course of business factor. So the judges realize like, no, you're not putting all your eggs in the custody basket. There are other factors too that are really important, and you've been under those factors. So I thought that was a good strategy that was executed very well. Could have been executed even slightly bit better, or just another moment to an answer to the actual question before you did it. It really helped. So good job today. Good answer on why Williams matters. I like to use the word trend of the Supreme Court, and I think that's kind of the answer to this case for your government is yeah, like Williams and Volkman, those are tough precedents. But this is an area of law that's in flux, and the trend is toward the government. You can't like define that exactly. There's not like a line from a binding precedent that proves that, but I think it's the reason why the government's probably right. I know the government's probably right. If the government's right, that's the reason why. And then finally, I thought maybe the best answer was on the Volkman surrogate witness difference. You knew the facts of our case. Good example, something we talked about early on this semester. Even though the purpose of the appeal is not to relitigate facts, it is still really important to know the facts of our case because appeals are about applying a legal rule to a set of facts. We don't get to debate what the facts are, but this winning depends on how we apply the rule to the facts when we all agree with the facts. And so you can't win that argument unless you know what the facts are. So good job, knowing the record of our case. So great job, Kelsey. Great job, everyone today. What an awesome day. All 6 of you. Just looking for just one of the next class. You don't have to. I think that in oral argument competition, they probably prefer that. But I think you should. In practice, I would say the court and not court. But maybe if I were a lower court judge, I would want to say that. Yeah, sorry.
Any tips on starting the rebuttal?
Yeah, good question. I would point to something your opponent said or something the judge said, and then respond to that. Because the purpose of rebuttal is not to repeat your argument. It's the only reason you get a rebuttal is because the court thinks it's important for you to be able to reply to stuff that was said. So don't do it in a hostile way. It's like my foolish opponent said this ridiculous thing. Here's why that's totally wrong. But if I may begin by responding to my opponent's assertion that blah blah blah, I think that argument is a statement. That's my point. Begin with something, or if I begin by responding to your question, the right answer to it is whatever. Maybe some question that the judge asked your opponent. Or if I begin by responding to something you said that I think is that I strongly agree with. You said, this court said, and then if the judge says something good for your side, say that, remind the court that they said that, and then expand on that. That can be the